Okay, I don't know if the technical problems that I'm having with my Wi-Fi are coming from Alabama or Australia or both, but we're gonna do this thing. I'm on my phone instead of the laptop because can't get my Wi-Fi working, and I'm gonna blame you.
All right, I'll take that. Um, I think it's a conspiracy.
Most
I
likely,
did.
I think.
I
I think.
Yeah.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, so tech nerds don't want this to happen, but they can get fucked
Yep,
because it's happening.
that's pretty much my attitude about it. I'm on my phone because the obviously I could not get my laptop connected, so I've got the camera off just because I think if I'm talking on my phone with the video on, it's you're either going to see my nostril all night or I'm going to be gesticulating wildly, and you're going to see shots of my ceiling fan and my fireplace, and it'll be disoriented for anybody who might be watching. So, um,
I'm actually in bed, so it's best that I've got my camera off. So
we appreciate that, sir.
thank you, thank you.
Uh, so it's been a long time since we've talked. When was the last time? It was like 2021 or something, wasn't it?
Yeah, something like that. It's like about 4 5 years ago now. Um, yeah, I've done absolutely nothing since then, and it's been great.
there's been I think there've been a few WhatsApp chats we've had
Yeah.
about the various problems in the literary and real world. I remember those.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I guess this Substack thing's been interesting, hasn't it? I think we all got the shit with Twitter. So when I jumped off Twitter probably 3 years ago, because it's like logging into a mental asylum, and then we found this Substack place, and it's a less violent version of Twitter. I think maybe
Yeah,
it's safe to say that.
yeah, that's close. I mean, it's retarded, but
That's a
you know,
perfect word.
there, but there are pearls and nuggets uh, within, so that's pretty good. Like I found some. Well, I mean, I should say since the last time you and I talked,
Mm.
even on WhatsApp, I've gotten on Substack, and it's like I've gone like I used to write all kinds of different stuff, but I've
Hmm.
focused totally on. I pretty much just write poetry and fiction now, and
Mm.
some creative nonfiction a little bit here and there, but that's all I really care about. So I've kind of gradually tried to get rid of all of my subscribers who are not looking for that, which is almost all of them.
Wow.
so so I've started, and you may know this because you're subscribed, but I've started posting stuff every day almost on both the newsletter as well as the
Mm.
notes feed, and just trying to obliterate all of my subscribers that I think mostly came there because of Ryan or somebody, and they think they're coming for red pill content, which I do not have, and that
Mm.
I don't mind, but that's just not what I'm into. I'm into the literary stuff, so I've been focusing in on that and trying to just follow and get subscribers who are interested in that, which is kind of a slog, but
Mm.
but I
Yeah.
was glad to see that you joined recently or got active and started writing shit again. And I was glad that the dwarf showed back up in the magician.
It's just like I saw all these, because you know how your feed on Substack is really random, so it'll be stuff you're
Yeah.
not even subscribed to, and I just had all these people like that thought they were magicians and witches and shit, and I just sitting there laughing my ass off at these people because like I thought it was like initially I thought they were just like taking the piss. I thought, oh, these people are just having a laugh, but they're dead serious.
Yeah.
they're doing spells and shit, and I thought I can make something out of that.
Well, my first comment is harkening back to one of your first stories, and also to Ruben Fonseca, which if there's anybody
Mm.
listening tonight, or in the future, and you want some good crazy short stories, Ruben Fonseca. Am I saying that right? Have I got that right?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, Brazilian bloke.
He's a Brazilian writer who writes just magnificent short stories that are just savage and whatever. But anyway, you know, my first thought was we need somebody to run over some magicians with their car after work. And my second was did the dwarf originally appear in that short story called Vegan Penis that you wrote?
I think so.
Was it that one?
I think so. I mean, I don't know. I've got a bit of an obsession with them, and putting them in stories. I don't know why, but I think yeah, vegan penis was the first time we saw a main sort of character.
Yeah, that was we put that in. I think that was the first thing you wrote for Punch Riot, or the first thing you put in Punch Riot
Mm.
when you started your run there. And yeah, I love that one. I don't remember it now, but at some point I'm going to go back and reread everything. And oh, hey, Bull Rush, how you doing, man? Um, the so I mean, the first thing I wanted to say was that you had two books out. One was The Leather Cannon, was up on Amazon for a while, which I
Hmm.
read, and I really liked The Leather Cannon. I remember you saying you were not entirely satisfied with it sometime after you
Mm.
published it, but I thought it was,
Mm.
it was just another one of those those stories that was terribly fun to read. And I thought you wrapped it up well, and I thought the conclusion was good, and the humor was good. But what specifically did you not like about it?
I don't know. Well, if I haven't looked at it for a while, but I don't I don't know. There was a few things in there that would probably change, um, but yeah, I'm not too sure. I was keen on the. It's just a bit loose, if you know what I mean. Like I think the
Yeah.
whole thing was a bit loose. Um, Surprisingly, and I think about this now, there's no way I could do this now. I wrote the whole thing on my phone.
You're right. Yeah,
Um,
I was going to bring that up. You wrote that on your phone at work, right?
yeah, I did over a period of a few weeks, and I don't even know how I did it now. I think the thumbs would fall off now. Honestly, like it's just stupidity. But yeah, I did the whole thing on the phone. But I know I've noticed a few. Obviously, there's a few grammatical errors in it and stuff like that. I mean, editing your own work is always very difficult, but um, yeah, I suppose before I pass full judgment on it, I probably should have another look at it. But yeah,
Well, if you need
yeah,
an
it's just
editor, I know somebody.
yeah. I know. I heard he's really good too.
I don't know about that. He's all right.
He's all right. Okay.
Didn't you, if I remember correctly, didn't you in your dedication page or something somewhere, didn't you put in the opening pages of whatever they call that goes before the novel itself, that you
Mm,
wrote the whole thing on your phone, so
yeah,
never let anybody tell you it can't be done or something like that.
yeah. Yeah. I did. Yeah, I don't think I'll be able to do that again. My eyesight's not good enough anymore.
Can you summarize real quick, do a quick plot summary of what the leather cannon is all about and what the phrase leather cannon means anyway?
Well, I'll do my best. So basically, it's about these two drunks that hang out in a pub and basically wander around town. I think they kill someone by mistake. Um,
Yeah.
one of them is like a failed writer who goes and burns down the librarian's
Yeah, I thought it's all coming back to me now. That was hilarious.
house. yeah, there's just all sorts of weird shit going on in there. Yeah, there's
Yeah.
body burying. Yeah, yeah, it's kind of mental.
And then somebody was supposed to excuse me. Sorry about that. Didn't
Yeah,
wasn't
so
somebody supposed to get in a fight behind the pub?
yeah, yeah, there was a fight. There was numerous fights, I believe. But yeah, there was one fight in the car park, I think.
Yeah, that's right. The car
Um,
park.
yeah, and the main guy was hallucinating all the time, and yeah, yeah, I'll have to have a look at that thing again. It's just, you forget what you put in
Didn't
there.
the yeah doesn't the phrase what leather cannon doesn't that refer to like whatever you call
Oh,
the
that's
pitcher
yeah, the bowler.
in
Yeah, yeah.
cricket?
So I think I just adapted this term. I think yeah. So the main guy is he's a again a failed sportsman, a cricketer, a bowler, who obviously gets on the drink too hard and ruins his career. Yeah. Uh, yeah, I didn't plan any of it out either. So I guess that's why it's hard to remember these things when you don't plot something out. You just write it off the top of your head. It's very easy to lose track of stuff. That's why I'm concerned that it's a little bit disjointed.
You know, I don't remember it being that way at all. I just read it and I thought it was pretty damn good. I didn't the looseness you refer to, which there's always somebody who writes is going to see their work differently from somebody who just reads it, right? So
Mm,
I did, but when I in my reading of it, I just thought it was a damn good read, and I didn't really
thank you.
see any of that. So,
I
but
appreciate
but then again, I'm just a guy from Alabama, so
it.
what do I know? Um, the other thing about it was that the thing about all your writing is that there's so much dark humor in there and so much very somewhat Ruben Fonseca like, except you take it a lot farther, I think, with like some of the absurd stuff and everything. I remember reading one of your stories back in the day when you were putting them on WordPress, and I don't remember the name of the story, but I remember there's this guy, he's brushing his teeth or something, and a voice starts talking to him out of the sink
Oh,
drain,
yeah.
and the guy's going like, he's like, "What is that down there? Is that AIDS or something in my sink?" And there was I don't remember the name of that story. I just remember reading it because that was funny. I remember, and some of the other ones like the Shibuya shit sandwich. I think that was one.
Yeah, that was a punch right one, I
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, and you gathered all those stories in shit origami, which
think.
when I first saw that when you were first talking about it, and I saw that was the title, I thought, Jesus, that's a good title. I don't remember if there was I think there was a story called that too, right?
Yeah, I think it was there was a story where these origami masters like
Right.
had like a gang war, and one of them accused the other one of having shit origami.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, that's where I just pulled the title from that story. So
But
um,
that's also currently out of print too, right?
yeah, yeah, you could probably like get on the old archive Wayback Machine and find the website. It's probably on there somewhere, um, maybe. But yeah, yeah, it's out of print. Um, that one, yeah, I don't know why. I don't know why I unpublished that one. I think it was just unpublished it because just because. I guess I don't think it
I think
sold any. To be honest with you, like I don't think it sold at all. Actually, I think it only sold the ones that I bought.
Well, I know I got one, but I don't remember if I got it from you or if I got it from Amazon. But
No, yeah, yeah, okay.
I've got it sitting right here. So let me see.
It's good
If
it's
it's
made its way
signed, I
across
got it
the
from
across
you,
the
I
world.
assume. But I don't see a signature in this one. I
Mm,
think Leather Cannon is the one you sent. Yeah, yeah, you signed Leather Cannon
no
for me,
shit.
so that's the one you sent.
Okay.
Oh no, you signed this one too. So yeah, you sent both of
Oh, there
these
you
directly to me. Oh, cool, nice. Well, you
go.
can
So
tell I
that's
haven't
what
been reading them every year, but
when when I had it published and I got the copies of shit origami sent to me, I was really pissed off because I thought the font was too small and it was too late. It's like, yeah, okay, cool. It's too small for me, but hopefully it's not too small for everyone else.
it is pretty small. I got to tell you,
Yeah, yeah.
it's a tad on
They've
the
changed
small
that.
side. But
Yeah,
and
these big ones.
most of those stories were from either your WordPress site or from Punch Riot, and I think you added some extras to it
Yeah,
when you
I didn't.
published that collection.
I don't think I put the punch right ones in there.
Okay.
Yeah, because they're yours. But yeah, I did put a. There was a longer story in there about just a bunch of homeless dudes trying to break into Yukio Mishima's house in Japan, in Tokyo somewhere. It ends in a fire, I think. It's a longer
Yeah.
one.
Yeah. Those were. Yeah. I was glad to see you were back writing on Substack a little bit because honestly, and I know this sounds bad, and I know this sounds I don't know how this sounds, but most of the writing that I see, not just on Substack but everywhere, just bores me to death, and it's hard for me to find anything that's interesting to read. And I know that sounds snobby or whatever, but it's like yeah, most people just write about the same stuff over and over again. But
Mm,
the thing I like about the people that I do like who are writing on Substack, which there are like two or three that I've found so far, and then with your stuff is that AI could not write your stories because they're just so twisted and hilarious. AI doesn't have a sense of humor, not really, not a good one anyway. So
yeah, it's a bit of a problem, isn't it? I think a lot of from what I've seen on Substack, and I don't read a heap on there, but everyone's seems to be trying to be super serious. You know,
way
they're
too serious, and everybody's writing nonfiction about how to optimize something or about how to figure
mm,
out some political bullshit or whatever else,
yeah,
which I care about. I have care about none
yeah,
of that. I don't want to optimize my life at all, and
no, no,
I don't care about politics, and I don't care about gender wars, and I don't care about any of
no,
that stuff. So
no,
what's left? It's fiction and poetry for me, anyway.
yeah. I guess like you get to that stage where you just like can't be bothered with it all. Like it's sort of like it is boring, isn't it? It's just
It
boring, like
is.
that shit.
Well, because it's the same story every day. That's what politics is. It's the
Mm,
exact same story every day. They change the pyrotechnics around a little bit, but for the most part, it's just the same shit every day. And when you start getting old, like, well, I know like I am, and you are, I think you're close.
mm, mm-hmm,
Um, you see all these cycles run over the decades and you realize that nothing changes, nothing,
mm,
it's just all a big, it's all a big scam. And the whole point is to get people all worked up about it so they feel like they're doing something, but in the end they don't, because most people, you know they get married around 30, and then who's going to change the world in their 20s, really. It doesn't really
mm.
happen. It doesn't really happen.
No,
And then you're in your 30s and you're having kids and a marriage and a job, and there's no time to change the world when you're doing all that shit. And then by the time you hit your 50s or late 40s, then you're just too tired and you don't give a shit anymore. And you can't
yeah,
and
yeah,
you realize that nothing works anyway, so why bother with it, and just
no,
zero in on your own shit. And ride whatever it is that you want to ride until you, spiral into the ground.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
and
But I guess for these I think it's different. It's a different game now, isn't it? Like the internet has united um, all the morons of the world have found each other. Finally found each other. And then sometimes that's a good thing. Like you
yeah,
can all the weirdos find each other, and all the
they have
the
something to
beautiful
do
people find each
finally.
other. Yeah, exactly. I mean, previously you'd be, you know, you would obviously before the internet, there was no internet, so you'd be distracted doing something else, wouldn't you? But now
Yep.
there's this noise, so much fucking noise. People carrying on about being a conservative, carrying on about being, I think in the US you call them liberals, don't you?
Yeah.
I just couldn't fuck it. Just couldn't be bothered. Who cares? Everybody's fair
Yeah.
game.
I mean, I don't even like to write satire about politics. That's how bored I am of it. But
Mm,
everybody has to get there in their own time. You people who are 19, they think that they figured it all out and they're going to make a difference. And you know,
mm,
10, 15 years goes by, and then they have the rude awakening that we all have at that point, I think. And it's a very, very rude awakening. Well, once
it
you
is.
start seeing how the sausage is actually made. But one thing I wanted to talk about with you, because we got on this last time, was
Mm,
I was surprised when we first met and you started talking about all the Southern writers that you like. And
mm,
can you remind me of like how you got into, because it was Larry Brown, I know was
mm,
one, Harry
mm,
Crews,
mm.
all the greats from back in '70s and '80s, and I was just wondering how you got into all that, being from Australia, and what
Mm.
introduced you to Southern writers and all that.
Yeah, I think it started. I think I was probably early 20s, maybe late teens, and I borrowed a book weirdly from the library. It was Flannery O'Connor. Um,
Yep.
it was one of the short story collections, or whatever. And I read that, and yeah, it was great. You know, she's
And
she's
she's
one of a
she's
kind.
more she's more savage than most male writers are.
Mm.
She
Oh,
That's one of the things I've always liked about her. Anyway, go ahead.
absolutely, yeah. I mean, yeah, and it just sort of like okay, this is the real deal. And obviously back then, it's sort of you know we didn't get a lot of stuff here. Like like it was very limited because we like have a parallel import law in Australia where like they don't generally bring in books that are published overseas because I think
Hmm.
they put a massive tariff on them. So we just got the stuff that the publishing companies are willing to release here. So Flannery O'Connor luckily was one of them. Then obviously internet expands and I start looking around, because you're curious, and I run into Larry Brown. And again, then from Larry Brown, we find Harry Crews, because obviously Harry Crews is a big influence on Larry Brown. Coincidentally, I recently read The Gospel Singer. Again, it still holds up. It's yeah,
Yeah.
it's and for those that don't have the opportunity or haven't had the opportunity to read it because all of his stuff's out of print, I think Penguin republished it again like last year or something,
Oh,
so it's out. You can get hold of it. Yeah, they did a couple of his books,
that's
which
good. Yeah.
is good
I was
good to
surprised
see.
that
Yeah.
I was surprised to see all that Harry Crews stuff out of print.
Oh
And
yeah.
and I think a lot of Larry Brown stuff is still in print. I'm not sure. I haven't looked in a long
Mm,
time, but I remember us talking. Was it Joe that we talked about that one time that you
mm.
said was so good, and they ended up making a movie out of it with Nicolas Cage, right?
Yeah. So the movie, I think that happened before we discussed it. I think, but yeah, the movie
Okay.
is good. It's excellent.
Yeah.
But yeah, the book obviously go the book first. Always go the book first. But
So
Barry, yeah,
no, go ahead. I
I
don't
was just
want
gonna
to.
say Barry Hannah's another one. Um,
That's right, Barry Hannah. Yeah, and like, so Flannery O'Connor is sort of my you know cornerstone for everything good about a short story because of the
Mm.
because of the dark humor, which is, as everybody who knows me knows, that's, what I love. That's one of the things I've always liked about your stories is just the gallows humor that was just brutal and savage in many cases, and also just the absurd stuff with with the knife wielding dwarf and some of the others, so like in terms of southern fiction in particular, is there like, is that because southern fiction overall tends to be dark.
Mm.
It tends, it's not always humor. Sometimes it's just straight, just sad, like Joe, um, in a way. But
Mm.
there's a lot of darkness and a lot of dark humor in Southern writing. Is that one of the things that kind of attracted you to it?
Yeah, yeah, and I think like it's very yeah, it's not lofty. I mean, I don't. It's not uppity. You know what I mean? Look, it's that. It's everyday people. A lot
Right,
of the time. Um,
right,
but Larry Brown, you always walk away from a Larry Brown book feeling somewhat depressed in a way because
right.
his stuff was very. He just had this way of just. It was just so dark the way he
Yeah,
put things together. And then obviously Harry Cruz again, there was a darkness, but he brought the freaks to the light, didn't he? Like you had again
sure did.
dwarves, people with deformities, just complete and utter weirdos, like Nazi
Bodybuilders.
sympathizing, yeah, bodybuilders, Nazi sympathizing weightlifters, just complete absolute lunatics. And
Didn't he?
he
Didn't
was,
he have one? Didn't he have one novel that I think it was a novel that the main character was eating a car or a truck or something or a
yeah, yeah,
motorcycle?
he ate a car, yeah, 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 that was quite horrific. What that had, because you can imagine coming out the other end. I mean, he didn't spare us any details. Um,
Right. That was,
um,
yeah. That was, talk about being unique and original and not
oh,
being cookie cutter like everybody else. Harry was a maniac
oh
because he
yeah,
was a
and
he
then
was a maniac in real life. I mean, that's the
oh,
thing. That's the thing about him writing about freaks and weirdos. He was a freak and a weirdo. He
oh
was a
yeah,
king.
yeah, he was absolutely insane. But like I heard, I read someone's only been one biography done on him, and I got hold of it and read it, and apparently, I mean, for a guy that did what he did to his own body, like in terms of the substance abuse. He did live for
Yeah,
a long time. Like I think he died at 75, maybe or 77 or something. Like he was pretty old when he died.
yeah.
Um, he sent all his papers to a university, I think, maybe in Georgia somewhere. I can't remember, but there he wrote and he attempted to write an autobiography, and he published it, but he only got up to the age of 7 before he had a nervous breakdown over the whole thing, and he didn't publish any fiction for like 11 years.
Huh.
And apparently, part two of that is in his papers, but he has dictated to whoever that it's never to be read. So even after his death, no one is allowed to actually get in there and have a look at it, because there's stuff in there that's quite incriminating, apparently.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, but he was completely nuts. I mean, I think he used to get into fights when he was in his 60s and 70s. So he could get into the local and just get the
Right.
shit beaten out of him by younger guys. So
Yeah, it's
that's
it's like it's like he was one of those guys that it's like he had to. It's like I don't know how to describe it. It was like, he didn't give a shit if he was going to lose. It
no.
wasn't it wasn't about winning or losing. It was about, I don't know what it was about. Maybe it was, just his own craziness or stuff,
Mm,
kicking around from childhood, or he was just a lunatic. And
mm,
so, kind of like the whole, some people just want to watch the world burn. And he wasn't really, he wasn't really like that. It was more like he wanted to watch himself burn.
mm,
And, and that was kind of crazy. But yeah, I heard all those stories. I read this interview with him one time
mm,
where where the interviewer kept asking him questions, and they were
mm,
sitting in this little local restaurant, and like a cafe or a bar and grill or something like that, and he had ordered some fresh bread and a big bowl of soup.
Mhm.
And the guy or girl who was asking him the questions, a lot of times he just answer with, "Man, smell that bread. That bread is just that bread will bring you to life. Look at this soup." And he would like they would be asking him these literary questions, and he was like, "Man, this soup is good." And a lot of people, I used to post that shit on Twitter, like, I like soup and tits, and everybody used to get a kick out of that. And that's actually where the soup thing came from. It was that time where uh, people that they were interviewing Harry Crews, and they would ask him questions, and his answer would always be some kind of non sequitur about soup or the bread that he was eating with his soup. And I just always thought that was funny. So whenever I talk about soup, that's really the origination of all that.
Uh,
It was just him. The soup was the answer to everything, basically. So, I've tried to carry that tradition forward. Be the flame bearer for Harry Cruz's soup talk. That's what I should call this. I should call this soup talk.
Soup talk,
Um,
yeah.
but
Yeah.
so, and then I'd never heard of Ruben Fonseca until you started talking about him with me. And it may have been
Mhm.
on that other podcast we did that time where you first started talking about it, or it may have been in a private conversation. I don't remember, but
Mm.
remember, I remember you. Oh, I think it was the didn't you had a story about that guy who ran over feminists or lesbians at a protest or something like
Yeah,
that?
yeah, yeah, yeah. The lesbianic collision, I think it was called.
Right, right. And and the that's what I loved about your characters are always just so fucked up and twisted. They were hilarious at the shit they did. Whether it was running over lesbians or ranting at somebody or yelling at the voice in their sink or whatever else it was. It was there. I always loved those characters, or the dwarf with the knife or whoever. But I remember you. Then you told me about that short story collection by Ruben Fonseca, which I don't remember the name of the
Mm.
collection. You probably do
The
though, right?
Taker, the Taker,
The
the
Taker.
Taker,
That's
and other
right.
stories.
That's right. And the first story in that collection was about the guy who goes out and runs over homeless people at night after work, and he has dinner with his wife,
Yeah.
I think, and then kisses her goodbye, and he goes out and runs over a homeless person, and then sneaks back to the house, and it's just like this such a matter of fact thing. I mean, there's no build up, there's no excitement in it really. He just runs over homeless person or
Yeah.
people, and I'll let people go and read that and figure out why for themselves, because I mean
Mm,
he's a very serious writer, even if some of the premises are absurd. There's a lot of stuff he's sort of
mm,
parsing in there, which about corporate life and the usual life and all this other shit, but that people like to talk
mm,
about. But that I think you had said well, you should read this guy, and so I bought his collection off of Amazon, and just loved it. That first story in particular was just great, and it reminded me a lot of course, you, because obviously he was a big influence on you writing stuff, right?
yeah, yeah. Yeah, I don't even know how I came across that. Because I remember I bought the book secondhand. I had to buy it secondhand because I don't think his stuff's in print, and not all of his stuff was translated into English either. So I've got a novel that he wrote, a crime novel, which was, yeah, bizarre, completely, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
it was just a really unusual book. But the short story one is definitely the best. Um, I don't know. I think I just wanted to read something from Brazil. It was just like some weird shit. I just must have woke up one morning and I thought, I need to read something from Brazil. So I found this, and yeah, it was unreal.
Yeah,
So it's one of the best.
people who actually read books do shit like that. Wake up one morning
Mm,
and be
mm,
like, "Hey, I'll just read something from Brazil today." I mean, I remember that. Um, what was it that I did like that? It was back in graduate school days. But I used to go to I went to graduate school in Birmingham, Alabama, and
mm.
at the University of Alabama in Birmingham, and
Hmm.
which was famous for its med school, not so much for its English department,
Oh, okay.
but I went, and but Birmingham back in those days had a lot of used bookstores, and I used to on the weekends I'd prowl all the used bookstores around Birmingham and found a
Mm,
bunch of good interesting stuff. I was mainly reading crime fiction back then, so I found a lot of crime
hmm.
novels, but a lot of classics too, and whatnot. So I used to prowl bookstores on a regular basis back in my younger days, but now I spend all my time working or trying to write my own shit, so I don't really have as much time to read or don't make the
How
time as
is
much.
how is the used bookstore situation going over there? Like, we don't have any here. Um, oh, well,
Yeah.
where I am anyway. But um, I just get the impression that there's a lot more used bookstores in the US. Like, it's a lot easier to get your hands on used books. I mean, it's a little bit.
Yeah, there
I mean,
is.
it's not
There
impossible here, but
well, I mean there is, but I think it's depending on where you're at. Like
mm,
I know somebody in a big city that goes looking for books all the time on the around town, and there seem to
hmm.
be a lot of stores, whether they're used bookstores or sometimes they're thrift stores, where they have a book section, which was one of the places I used to find a lot of good stuff because
Mm,
a lot of the people that went into thrift stores, which is basically used furniture and kitchen items
mm,
and stuff like that over here. I don't know what they would call that over there, but a lot of them would have a small corner where they had used
hmm.
books, and most of the people going into those stores weren't looking for books, they were looking for furniture, so you could
Oh,
find some good stuff on those shelves. And I think like I know around here in Alabama we don't have nearly as many used bookstores as we used to. there's pl-
uh,
I'm sure there's more than you guys have since you have none.
hmm. Yeah, we got
but
bugger all. Yeah.
there aren't, there aren't as many, even in the town where I live right now.
Mhm.
There were a few that were close to my house. I used to stop by on occasion back
Mm.
maybe 10 years ago, and those are all gone.
Oh, shit.
I don't know if COVID wiped them out, which is what I think, or if something else did. And I live in a university town, so
Mm.
there are more book readers here than in your typical small city or town. But yeah, the bookstores around here have been going out of business. So it's mainly just, whatever the corporate bookstores are. I think now there may be a
Mm.
couple of used bookstores left, but and I used to love that too because you go in and find I mean, this dates me back to like 1989 or 1990, but I'd find
Mm.
great used books for 20 cents or 50 cents or something, and
Mm.
I don't know what they cost now since I don't do that anymore, but you could find a lot of good stuff back then.
We used to have, well, I think we still do here. Like, there's this massive charity that has a book sale, like, every quarter or something. And so they'll hire out like a massive hall or whatever, and they'll just like have all these tables with all these secondhand books, disorganized, and, you've got to sift through them. And I remember I used to go to them, maybe 10, 15 years ago. And I remember one time I found a copy of As I Lay Dying. Um,
Mm.
and it was basically like finding a gold nugget because that book, back then you couldn't, that you would never find that in a bookstore. Like,
Yeah,
I don't even know how I got here. Like, I grabbed it. It cost me like $2. I was like, yeah, okay, that's
yeah.
journey worthwhile. But I mean, the last time I went to one of those things, the whole thing, I swear, the whole table was with the Da Vinci Code on it, and I just walked out.
Yeah,
Like, everyone's just gone, fuck this book, and they've just like donated it. And it's like, they've turned up to the sale. It's like quarter of a million copies of the Da Vinci Code for sale, $1.
yeah, yeah. I've seen that. Yeah, I've seen that too. I don't think I've been in a corporate bookstore in, I can't remember the last time. I think I went in there to buy a gift for somebody. There's a specific book they wanted that I knew would be there, and it was there, so I bought
Mm.
it. And but I haven't been to any of those in forever. And yeah, did you when you were doing the used bookstores and
Mhm.
reading a lot. How many, like in a month, how many books would you read?
Oh, I'm a pretty slow reader, so and maybe between 4 and 6.
Okay.
Like if I was pushing it. Um, I used to commute to work on a train. It was an hour and a half. So that's where I get most of my reading done. I don't do that anymore. So I usually just read at night time now.
Okay.
So, but yeah, I think 4 to 6. But how about yourself? I mean,
Are you still reading that much?
yeah, probably. I'm probably doing a bit more this year. I don't know. I
Okay.
don't know what's happened this year. I just a faster. Um, maybe I'm just getting faster in my old age. I don't know. It's
Hey,
bizarre.
I've heard that can happen. How many?
Well, I went to
What kind of stuff are you reading now? You still reading classic stuff or what?
well. I'll have a look. I've just got to look at my list of books that I've been reading. So the last thing I read. Oh yeah, I read recently. I reread the Orchard Keeper. It's a Cormac McCarthy book.
Yep.
I hadn't read that for about 20, 25 years, I guess. Yeah, it was good. I liked it.
Yeah, I haven't
I
read that
know
one.
a lot of people think it's a challenging read. I think it probably is in places, but I mean it's just it's McCarthy. I mean, get
Yeah.
over it. Just get on with
Yeah.
it. Obviously, I read The Gospel Singer recently. Reread. I'm doing a bit of rereading at the moment. I got a lot of books on the shelf. I thought, why not? I read a John Foss novel recently. Um, I
Which
think he
one?
won the Nobel. Morning and Evening. It's a
Okay.
really odd book because there's no chapters and there's barely any sentences. So it's like a stream of consciousness. The
Yeah.
dude is essentially he's dead in the book, but he doesn't realize it. No, I didn't mind that. I didn't mind
Okay.
that.
Cool.
That's
Yeah. Yeah, I miss a lot of that. I miss a lot of that funky stuff that, was definitely not a Da Vinci Code
mm,
or Dean Koontz or whatever. Which, I'm not shitting on any of those guys because, God bless them. They, wrote a book and everybody bought it and probably didn't read it, just like nobody reads Moby Dick, but they talk about it all
mm,
the time. But the the shit like Finnegan's Wake and all that stuff,
mm,
which is it's all it's fun if you're in a certain mindset because
mm,
there is it's a challenge to kind of figure out what's going on. So you get a story and a puzzle at the same time, which is, if it's done right, it's pretty cool. If it's not
mm.
done well, then it ends up being a pretty much of a slog, I
Well,
think.
that's true. But also, like, speaking of like classic authors or whatever, like these people would, um, they pump out one book, you know, maybe every 3 years,
Yeah.
you know. But these days, like you see them online, and before I mention this person's name, I just need to mention N.T. White, the author of Content. He's going to hate me for saying this, but I'm going to mention her name, Colleen Hoover. She's pumping out.
Yeah.
She's pumping out a book every 3 months.
Yeah.
This is the problem now. This is the problem. You're just getting shit. You're getting shit,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
you go back over an author who is no longer with us. You go an older author who's no longer with us. You go over their catalog. You'll see. Maybe they've got like 6 to 10 books over their lifetime.
Right.
And if they're good, they're going to be good. So
Yep.
it's always you can always pick up one of those books and be guaranteed you're going to be at least entertained to some degree.
Yeah, the thing I think is interesting is that, and I'm not a highbrow, highfalutin kind of guy myself because I like all that literary fiction, or I like a lot
Mm,
of it, but I also, I I've probably read more crime fiction and detective
mm,
novels than anything else. Although
mm-hmm,
I would argue that those were all, pretty good, and they weren't coming out with one every 3 months either. So there was,
mm,
if you know the right names and find the right novels, that they're actually pretty good kind of contemporary naturalism or realism.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but like the stuff that comes out of, well, I'll give you an example. It's like today I mainly read poetry because
Mm-hmm.
I don't have a lot of free time, or I don't make a lot of
Mm-hmm.
free time because I've got a few different things I'm trying to do all the time. And so I generally just sit down and read poetry when it's time to read, because
Mm-hmm.
it's short and you can get through it.
Yeah, true.
It's not a commitment really. It's like, you read a few and then you're done, and then you can go back, read another few, and then you're done. So I've been
Mm.
doing that and comparing it with a lot of the poetry that I see on Substack, for example. and
Mm-hmm.
and and I'm always interested in the people who write fiction or poetry on Substack, because
Mm-hmm.
it all seems to kind of blend. Everybody's kind of doing the same thing, and most of it looks pretty self-referential anyway. So it's like it's not just about writing about yourself, it's just writing about your feelings, and
Mm.
there's nothing really objective there to hang on to. It's just a lot of, either "oh woe is me" or "oh I feel good," and there's not really a either story or any kind of objective framework there where you can, where they're actually interacting with the outer world. It's just all about interior, and I see a lot of that. And Ryan Stone and I talk about this a lot.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
We see a lot of that in a lot of the fiction too, because it's a lot of world building. And I've read countless stories on Substack where the whole story is basically just describing something, and that's it. And
Oh,
it's
shit.
it's it's like, 1,000 or 2,000 words of description, and some people talking occasionally, but there's no real plot. There's really nothing
Mm.
much going on there, and it gets to be kind of old, because but I also think part of the problem is that I'm old school, and I
Mm.
expect a story. And I think a lot of what people like these days, especially younger readers, is they like interior monologues for some reason. And
Yeah, it's weird.
yeah, sometimes it's okay, but I mean, after a while, it's like, do you understand what a plot is? There's story arc, anything. Do you know how to tell a story? And I think Ryan and I talk about that a lot too, is a lot of people
Mm.
just don't know how to tell a story, and that's part of the problem, because I get
Mm.
bored by that other shit. I want people interacting with each other. I want something to, there be some kind of conflict. I want something to happen, instead of, just a bunch of people having coffee and whining about whatever. And that seems to be what's popular these days. I don't know.
Well, well, I guess, yeah. I mean, there's very little real drama in their lives, I suppose, and I don't know. It's funny because I saw Ryan posted something the other day, and he said he'd bought five. I think he said five independently published novels of late, and he couldn't even get past the first page on them. And I thought, well, good for him. He's giving independent writers, a go. But I mean,
Yeah.
obviously, he couldn't get through the first page, and that's always concerning, isn't it?
Yeah, because and one of the things, since I've worked with Ryan on most of his, or I guess I've worked out with him on all of his books, and when he started writing fiction, one of the things that he focused on was, I mean, it doesn't have to be like an exploding volcano, but his thing
Mm.
was always that, the first page is kind of your down payment.
Mm.
Right, it's your down payment to the reader that this is going to be worth reading. So you better make the first sentence, you better make the first paragraph, you better make the first page at least interesting enough that, somebody who's going to engage with it is going to read it and go, okay, well, this is pretty good. And then,
Mm.
hopefully the next page uh lives up to the first page, and then the third page lives up to the second, and before you know it, you've got a whole book there that's interesting to read. And of course, everybody's not necessarily going to be into it, but
Mm.
at least you should try. And I see a lot of people writing stuff. It doesn't look like they're trying very hard. So,
Well,
you
you
know,
can't make everybody happy, can you? Like, I mean, I'm sure there's I'm sure I'm positive, 100% positive. There's people out there that think I'm shit. That's fine. They can have that opinion. I don't really care. I mean, go and read something else.
Yeah.
I remember on Twitter once someone gave me shit. Someone said something I'd written was was trashy, and I'm like, yeah, okay, cool. And I think I had a story where the dude punched a bird out of the sky, and that's what he took issue with. I'm like, how can you take issue with that? It's a bird, man. Who gives a shit about birds? I mean, come on.
I remember. Yeah, I just wrote a little piece on Substack where there were birds in it, and I said something like, "I always blame birds for everything because it's probably their fault anyway, right? Fucking birds."
Yeah,
I love giving birds a hard time, especially owls. But
oh, owls.
anyway, the yeah, I mean, I think I remember that story of yours. I remember, I don't remember anybody reacting negatively to your stuff. I remember them loving it, especially your manosphere satire. That everybody really loved the manosphere satire. What was that called again? There was
uh, I can't remember. It was a really long title. I just yeah the
you had a couple.
I
You had
don't
a couple of those, right?
yeah. I've never they've never been published in hard copy because I just thought they'd aged really badly, and I think they probably would have.
Yeah.
So you know,
That
it's
was fun. That was some pretty funny topical shit, though. I remember, what was wasn't there a, wasn't there there was a George Bruno character in there. I remember when there was that big hugging thing. What was that?
Cuddle Club. That was Cuddle Club. That's in
Yeah, the Cuddle Club.
that's in shit origami. That one. Yeah, because I think I sort of yeah. I remember there was like an article on the news or something about guys can benefit from hugging each other. I was like, get fucked.
Yeah,
Who
yeah,
wants to do that shit? Like, honestly, yeah. So and
yeah.
yeah.
And the other funny thing is, I don't know if I ever told you this, but
Mm,
back when you were uh, on Twitter and you were doing your WordPress site, and I was doing my WordPress site.
mhm.
Your profile picture everywhere is that Japanese actor. What's his name again?
Toshiro Mifune.
Yes, right. Yeah, Toshiro Mifune. And he was uh he was kind of the hobo samurai character in Seven Samurai, right? That's what he played. That's who he
Mm.
played.
Yeah,
Um
he's in a lot of Kurosawa movies. Yeah.
yeah. And so there was and so you had that black and white picture of him, and I had my profile picture was a black and white picture of this Russian guy whose name I can't even remember at the moment, but um, he wrote a lot of really short pieces. Let me see if I can find his. Shit, I can't. But he wrote a lot of really short pieces in Russia back during the communist days, the early communist days, and he wrote in the paper, and so he'd write these stories that were really
Mm.
critical of the communist regime and the quality of life under communism. But he knew that if he did it overtly, that he'd just get thrown, into a gulag or whatever they call it over there, sent to Siberia, that kind of thing.
Mhm.
And so he would sort of disguise it so people would read his stories and they'd be really kind of weird. They'd have a weird pace and a weird timing, and they would sort of highlight the thing that he wanted to talk about would be kind of in the background, and they would highlight something that was more kind of social customs based or mannerism based, but in
Mm.
the background there's like, this building that's, all the plumbing is falling off the walls and stuff like that. And so all these communist party officials would read it because they wanted to see if there was anything subversive towards communism in there. And they would all read it, and I think the thing that I read said that they would all come away with it thinking that there was something wrong with it, but they couldn't figure out just what, because of the way the dude told the story and structured it and everything. And
That's great.
so I always thought that was it was uh, Zoschenko, Nicholas, not Nicholas. It was something. Zoschenko was the last name. So anyway, long
Hmm.
story short is I used him as a profile picture, and then a bunch of guys on Twitter
Mm.
would DM me on Twitter, and they would ask me if I was you,
Yeah,
if I was,
that was pretty. That was funny.
and I'd be like, no, I'm not, and they're because this was back specifically during when you were doing the Manosphere satire. And
Mm.
there were a couple. Ryan was one. There was somebody else that I won't say on the air, just because probably doesn't want to be mentioned. I don't know, but um,
Mm.
DM me a couple times. He's like, "Are you this guy?" And I said no. And then sometimes people would think I was anyway, just because they got the profile pictures kind of conflated. So it was like
Mm.
because they were both headshots of the guy, and and so they would DM me and ask me if I was you, and I'd be like, no. And then I
That's pretty
don't think
funny.
I don't think they believed me. I think they thought I was lying just to cover it up. But I was like,
That's like,
if I was, why would I do that and have my numbers split between two different accounts? Why not just write them all on one account? Because it's not like I would be, it's not
yeah.
like if I was writing your stories that they would somehow you know, blackball me or something. I mean, it's like, neither one of us exactly had thousands of people reading our shit. So what difference did it
Nah.
make? But
It's funny because like, I remember that's when we did that first like podcast. Yeah, that was like the first point you made is you go, fine, look, see, we are two separate people.
that's right. Yeah, I remember. Yeah, that's right. I remember that now. It's like, and then somebody else said, "Well, you could have pre-recorded this and whatever." And I
Oh,
was like, "Can you imagine me doing an Australian accent and making it work? I mean, That's
do
not
it.
that's not something your average Alabamian can pull off very well. And if I tried, I'd sound pretty retarded. So. But those are fun days though. Back in those days, like I guess it was right
Mm.
before and during the pandemic, and
Mm.
there were a lot of people writing that kind of stuff, and
Mm.
of course we had Punch Riot going, and so there was
Yeah,
you and me, and then there were other guys who were writing shit. Ryan wrote a little. Chester
yeah.
Rockwell wrote a little. There was a lot of MT White was writing a lot of stuff,
Mhm.
and that was a lot of fun back then. I remember.
Yeah, it was. And then it just sort of, I don't know, just I think Twitter fizzled out a bit, didn't it? It went a bit silly. Um,
Well, when you left, it did. I think it was your fault, basically. I think you caused the downfall of that literary renaissance that we had going over there.
that's funny, but yeah, I don't know. I just yeah, it just ran out of steam. I just thought, see you
So,
later. I'm out. I'm
yeah,
out.
yeah.
Yeah, but
What is the plan going forward? Are you writing? You got more stuff in the works that you're going to post on Substack, or what's going on with that?
yeah, I'll probably put some more stuff. I'd like to publish another book at some point, but I can't I can't tell anybody when that's going to happen. I mean, I got like a half written novel, um, but I don't know whether I want to pick that up again. I mean, well, it's got a dwarf in it, of course, but
Yeah.
they always do. It's
Well,
actually got two in it, I think, if I remember correctly. There's two. So I think I started writing it when I was, just hit that critical peak of obsessiveness. So I might need to maybe start again.
are you still writing on your phone at work, or did you
No,
give that up?
no. I've actually, it's just too hard on my eyes now, weirdly. So
Huh.
I, I've, I've, I've got a notepad. I've got a notepad and a pencil now, a pen now. Unfortunately, I'm still getting old. Like I've just reverted to analog shit. Um, but yeah, I do write in that quite regularly, and then I don't use it as a draft. I just use it to put down some ideas, and then that's how I got the magician. Like I had all these ideas about this guy that thought he was magic, and I thought, oh, I'm going to turn this into something. So it's sort of like a starting point for me, I guess.
I'm gonna go out on a limb and make a guess here, and in so doing, I'm sure I'm going to fuck it all up and reveal that I don't know what I'm talking about. My guess is that you don't have too much of a problem coming up with story ideas. Not that my guess is that you don't try very hard, and they just kind of jump out
Mm,
at you when you see something funny or weird or
yeah.
strange or whatever. Is that the case?
Well, yeah, because like people are just so fucking weird now. Like, I mean, I guess they
Um,
always have been, yeah. But like, if you are around people a lot and you spend a lot of time, like, whether it's in an office environment or say you're working any sort of job, like everybody's like fucked up to some
yeah,
degree. Like they're insane, and they just give you material if you listen.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, that was Ryan and I have an ongoing sort of side conversation about how everybody's worried about everybody's talking about writer's block, and they can't do this and they can't do that and they can't,
Mm,
where the idea is coming from and stuff. But I think half of it is they don't work at it very much, and the other half is, or more than
mm,
half is that, they just don't pay attention to what's going on around them. Because when I anywhere I go, I see shit that could be a story, that could be a story, that could be a story, and I'm constantly,
yeah.
or conversations I have with people that have nothing to do with it, but
Mm.
various people I talk to will just have a knack for saying things, and I'm like, oh my God, you could take that and just run with it, and you'd have the funniest damn story that you ever heard. I mean, there's a the I have this I have these two stories, and I'm working on the third in the series about this guy. One of them is called A Quick Stop at Bucky's, and the other one is called A Quick Stop at Waffle House. And it's just this insane guy who sounds very much like a Barry Nishizawa character. I was probably channeling you when I did it, but he's insane, he's out of his mind, and he goes into these various establishments, and he starts just ranting and raving about something. And in Quick Stop at Bucky's, it's basically just he's calling everybody a butt fucker, and and he thinks everybody is I don't know what he thinks, honestly. And I wrote the thing, but he just responds so crazily and violently to everybody. And then in A Quick Stop at Waffle House, he's convinced that there's a meteor heading for Earth and it's about to destroy it, and so he wants to have one good breakfast before before the world gets destroyed. And then he has all these bizarre interactions with the people in there. But I got the entire idea for that story just from, I was talking to somebody who just happened to mention something like, what are you ordering if you're at Waffle House and there's a meteor headed straight for it? And 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 so I was like, oh shit, that's good. So I wrote it down. I was like, hey, do you mind if I use that? They're like, no. So, and I've got another one that I'm working on that's similar to that came out of a conversation with somebody. So, I mean, if you pay attention, there's just
Mm.
so much damn material out there. It's
Oh yeah.
crazy.
Oh, there is. I mean, this is the thing, and I think a lot of people, tend to isolate themselves these days, and the writing becomes inward facing, doesn't it? Instead of outward
Yeah.
facing,
Yeah.
they're not connecting with people. But I had a conversation with an obese woman once. Like, she was a big girl, and she told me, like, looked at me dead in the face, right, and said, if I eat a teaspoon of honey, I don't have to eat for days. And like, she was dead. So I said, well, I'm thinking, why don't you fucking do that all the time? Like,
Yeah.
but and that, obviously I didn't use that, but it's something like that. You can just like a small interaction that you have with somebody, just as that, small conversation, it could turn into something completely bizarre. Because
Right.
people are bizarre. A teaspoon of honey. Now every time I have honey, I always jokingly say, well, I won't have to eat for the rest of the day now.
That's
Yeah.
hilarious. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. No, that's the character in, you never find out the name of the character in those quick stop stories I wrote, but everybody's in both stories, somebody mistakes him for somebody named Carl. And so And so I call him not Carl. That's his name. I call him not Carl, and so, but in both stories he's always ranting about how he's he's going downstate to change his life. And he never says how or why or anything. But I got the idea when I was actually on my way home from visiting my parents who live in North Alabama, and I live
Mhm,
in kind of down in the southern part of the state right now, and
mhm,
uh, and so I actually stopped at a Bucky's that's just outside of that's up in North Alabama,
mhm,
and I just got the idea while I was in there, and I heard and I don't years ago somebody said I overheard somebody say that he was going downstate to change his life, and it had something. I think it has something to do with religion. I'm not sure, but that stuck with me
right.
for like 30 years. And then I was in Bucky's, and there was some guy at Bucky's who was ranting about something. And then
Mhm.
I said, "Hey, that guy sounds kind of like Aaron Clary." And I started imagining Aaron Clary being this crazy guy with a screw loose, which is not a big leap for the imagination, if you know Aaron.
Mm,
And I was like, what if this kind of Aaron Clary character, but turned up to like 100, 100 times, how intense Aaron may or may not be, and then you add in this thing about I'm going downstate to change my life, and he's afraid everybody's a butt fucker, and so it all kind of built from that from with like shit I heard 30 years ago, and then maybe something I heard 15 years ago, and then something I heard yesterday. Now
mm,
I'm not saying any of those things are great examples of storytelling or fiction, but I say that just to say that I think our ideas everywhere. It just takes
mm,
it takes something to be able to see them there. And I'm not saying I know what that is either. I just know that if it just seems to me like if you look, they're there, as long as you're not kind of um, limiting yourself by saying, okay, this is what a story has to be about. This is
mm.
the only thing I'm going to do is I'm going to write about Victorian women trying to get married. Um, but if you just kind of keep your eyes open, nod to Jane Austen. But if you just keep your eyes open, there's just a lot of hilarious, crazy shit out there that somehow we've trained ourselves to overlook and not really see,
Mm.
but it's everywhere. I mean, it's in the mirror too, and I'm just astonished because I never have a shortage of ideas. Now, I'm not saying that the results are that great, but I never have a shortage of ideas. But you know,
No, yeah, and I think it's just listening and observing, isn't it? Really, I mean, I guess people the big thing these days is don't judge people and stuff like that. It's not judging people. It's just it's observing. You're just looking and you're just going, wow, that's weird.
yeah,
Objectively, that's weird. People are
yeah,
weird. I mean, you can imagine someone saying that though. Oh, yeah, I'm going down south to change my life. That's
yeah.
I can. Like, I've never been to the US, but I can imagine seeing someone say that or hearing someone say that. Like,
What does
just doing
what
different
does that
things.
mean? What does that mean for
It,
that person? I'm going downstate to
yeah.
change my life. And again, I think this was a religious thing, but I
Mm,
don't really remember where I saw it or where I heard it. It was like, you know that's just such a singular phrase, right? It's like what does that mean? That's so there's it seems like there's so much in there that you could unpack, and
mm,
how do you do that, and where do you go with it is like the challenging part, but the idea is there, and it seems like if you follow it, it's going to take you somewhere. I mean, it's interesting to me that you like Flannery O'Connor was one of the first people you read that made an impact on you, as she was for me too.
mm,
And incidentally, I just want to throw out that people give women writers a lot of shit, and
mm,
I certainly am one of them. But I give everybody a lot of shit,
mm,
and I give my own self a lot of shit. But with someone like Flannery O'Connor, and then with what you just said, there are there's one, well, there's one really significant thing there when you said that you don't really plan out your novels or your stories, you just sort of start writing, and she was kind of the same way. You know, there are a couple of different ways that I've in listening to people over the years, they talk about their stories, and some people they kind of map it out in advance with an outline. I know
Mm,
Ryan does that. He talks about that a lot, and a lot of
mhm,
others do too. And then there are other people who start with like a kernel of something. It may be a phrase like "I'm going downstate to change my life" or whatever it is, or it may be,
mm,
a particular person doing a particular thing, and it's a very small thing, but you can start with that, and then sort of a story grows out of it organically as you work with it. And Flannery O'Connor
mhm,
used to talk about that a lot, and she talked about how she did it that way. She was more of an organic storyteller because there would be something she would hear, whether it was a tone of voice or a phrase or whatever, a scene between two people that she happened to witness or just thought about, and she
mm,
was like, "Man, that thing is just pregnant. There's so much in there that is going to come out of it." And so she would write
mm,
from that, and so it's like the story would bloom like it's a flower, as opposed to it's mapped out like you're building a railroad or something. And both, I think both approaches are valid. It's just up to it just
mm,
depends on the person who's doing it. But I tend to seize on, like, there's a meteor heading for Waffle House, what am I going to order? And then I just focus on that, right? And
mm,
somehow, and that's just what works for me. But for other people like Ryan, like I said, and I know this because of the projects I've worked for him on, is that he has a general concept of a story, then he plans it out, kind of
mm,
maps it out in advance, and he tweaks it as he's writing it too. So the framework, the plan might change as he's going, and discovering new ideas. And I think really, and if you start it, organically, a lot of times you benefit from, at some point along the way, saying, all right, what makes the most sense from a story arc perspective, and so
mm,
I'll end up kind of doing that too. So I think both of those approaches, I think people tend to favor one or the other, but they often use a little bit of whichever one they don't start with to
mm,
sort of help clarify maybe. But it's interesting to me that you said what you said about, you just kind of start, because that's what Flannery O'Connor used to talk about. That's how she did it. And it was always, she'd overhear a conversation, and that one conversation that was maybe, a minute between two people ends up becoming,
mm.
the foundation or the seed for an entire story that's 5,000 words or whatever. So it's interesting way to look at it.
Yeah, yeah. And I guess it, obviously, like you said, both ways are valid. It just depends on how your mind works as well. I mean, I've never been able to plan anything out. Like, I think I attempted it a couple of times, but I don't. It just didn't work. I never finished it. It's just, to me, it's sort of like, you know, I I'm able to get it out better if I don't know what's going to happen. And I think it's more
Right.
insane that way too, because, like, if you just, like, without any restraint, just throw the idea on the page, you know, there's no filter. You plan it out, you're going to
Right.
filter it to a bit because you're going to go, well, that's a bit wild, but not put that down there. And some of the shit that I've put on paper is just, like, completely ridiculous. I mean, I probably wouldn't have, been as insane if I'd, had that filter in place. Simply because,
Yeah.
you look at it and you just go, well, that's pretty wild. You know.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's that. I mean, that's the way I tend to write too. And Flannery O'Connor said something in a lecture one time about how, um, for her, she would say that the best stories are stories that surprise you, because you're very often surprised in life, right? Because the
Mm,
last person you think is going to be the one who's diddling the altar boys, ends up being the one who's diddling the altar boys, right? And so,
mm,
or something along those lines. And so, she used to say, if I'm not surprised, how's the reader going to be surprised? And that's why she favored the way she did. But those were the kind of stories she wrote, where things were very surprising. Whereas in something like a a crime novel or a detective novel where you can do it that way, but they also
Mm.
tend to be a little bit more structured and formulaic. So it makes more sense to plan the whole thing out because
Oh
um,
yeah.
because because sort of the narrative depends on that kind of um, uh, what's the word? Not expectancy, but Jesus, what a horrible word that is. But like expectations, like there's
Yeah.
a set of expectations, and there's going to be you're going to find out the butler did it on page 172 every time. So it makes sense to kind of plan that out more formally for stuff like that. But whereas with something like Flannery O'Connor's stories, where there's it's like you said, there's bizarre shit happening, and a good man is hard to find. There's um
Mm.
the family gets killed at the end. Nobody sees that coming. And Good Country People, which is really probably my favorite Flannery O'Connor story, even over Good Man is Hard to Find, which is really hard to beat. I think Good Man is Hard to Find is a perfectly
Mm.
written story. Good Country
Oh
People
yeah.
is a little long, but in Good Country People, there's a traveling Bible salesman who ends up stealing the artificial leg of this big hulking woman who's a philosophy student and is
Wow.
always ranting. She's always ranting against Christianity, and then she kind of so this traveling Bible salesman supposedly kind of seduces her. She falls in love with him, and they go up in the hayloft to make out and shit. And then at some point, he talks her to take off her artificial leg, and he puts it in his big traveling case. And then runs off with it. And I think the final scene of that story is the girl, the philosophy student girl's mom and her neighbor are standing in the kitchen at the window drinking coffee, and they see the Bible salesman running across the pasture with his big black case supposedly full of Bibles. But actually, when he opened the case, I think it was like there was a bottle of whiskey and some cigarettes and some other shit in there, maybe condoms. I don't remember, but they see him, but he has them all, hoodwinked. So they see him running across the pasture with his case, and
Mm.
they just think he's in a hurry to go and sell his next Bible to somebody who needs one. And they just say, "Man, he's just good country people, isn't he?" And he's running across the field with the chick's artificial leg in his case. So I mean, she was just so brutal and savage. You can't.
Oh yeah.
I mean, you can't. I don't think you can talk about good short stories at all without talking about her. She's got to be in the pantheon up there somewhere because those are
Oh
just
for
so
sure.
so well written and good. But that's what she used to say. She used to say that I start with a kernel of an idea and I just see where it goes.
Mm. Okay.
And
I
and
read.
I think you're right because that's the sense I've always gotten from reading your stories back on your WordPress site and now on Substack was that there's always. I mean, you never know. I never know what to expect when I read a Barry Nishizawa story. There's always I know there's going to be something crazy in there that's going to be hilarious, and I can't wait to get to it. But I never know what it's going to be because it's always something just so bizarre. And I sit here and I try to remember, and I need to go back through shit origami and read all that again. But I remember just when you were pumping out a story every week,
Mm.
or maybe it was every few days. I don't remember what your frequency was,
Yeah.
but for a while there, you were really churning them out, and they were all good.
Yeah. I had a lot to say.
Yeah. Well, I
But
guess
yeah,
we could
it's
wrap it
been.
up. It's been about an hour and a half, but is there anything you want to talk about as far as what you're trying to do or what may be coming, or you just gonna leave us hanging and
No,
let
I'm
us
just.
wait and see?
Yeah. I mean, I can't commit at the moment. I'll just keep putting stuff out as I can. But yeah, I don't. Yeah, it's a bit of a. Yeah, I'm not as active as I used to be, obviously, because I'm not online as much as I used to be. So it does make a difference. But yeah. Look, I'll keep publishing when I can. But hoping to put another publication out at some point. That would be the ideal. But yeah, not really sure when that's going to happen. I do have an idea um, for one. I just need to get off my ass and then put it down.
You definitely do because there's there's almost nothing out there that I, and again, I say this, I sound like a snob. It's not that I'm a snob, it's that I'm really, I like really either unusual shit or something that's very, very unique and sort of elegant and eloquent and just a great small voice. And I don't, I see a lot of people trying, but I see, I don't get a lot that really interests me much. And so, and I've always loved your stuff, and I think it's hilarious that like all of the writers on Substack who have such huge followers and huge follower counts and stuff like that. They bore me, and it's not that they're bad writers.
No.
It's just that the stuff that they write about just absolutely doesn't interest me, and then you know and then you have to factor in that I'm just an old guy, so you know my time, maybe my time is past to know what's good now, so I have to stay stuck in the past with all the shit that I like that's a little bit more traditional in terms of storytelling, which even though your stuff is really unusual, it's still kind of more traditional old school storytelling than a
Mm.
lot of what you see now, which tends to be very, it's not stream of consciousness, but it's similar to that with a more, I think with a more traditional or accessible narrative that but it's kind of told in a, okay, well, I'm just here doing this and whatever. And that really seems to appeal to people today. But I still kind of like something that's a little bit more trad as far as the way you tell a story. And I suspect that, that's why nobody reads my shit. So between maybe it not being any good and between it being just old school, that maybe that's where my downfall is. So maybe I need to get a van and drive around the United States and just write about getting laid in various places. But
Well, I
I'm a
mean,
little old for that.
I got 17 reads for something the other day, and I thought, yeah, okay,
Pretty
that's a
good.
good one.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
pretty good.
pretty good, pretty good. 17 souls out there. That's my
Well,
31
the thing that
subscribers.
I've always thought was funny is I'll spend a few days or a couple of weeks or sometimes even longer. I'll get an idea for a story, I'll jot it down, and then, a year and a half later, I'll figure out how to make it into something or to actually finish it. But then sometimes I'll
Mm.
post it's like the Twitter days. I'll post something like, I like soup and tits, and it'll get 30 or 40 likes because it's just a throwaway piece of nothing that's amusing, and then something
Mm.
I spent a lot of time on, that I came up with in 12 seconds, but then something I spent a lot of time on gets absolutely, get 5 likes, and I'm happy with that. And really I am, because I mean, I'm not doing this to make a living. I'm just doing it because
No.
I always wanted to write stuff, and now I finally have the opportunity. And back when I was raising kids and shit, it was hard to find the time, and I just
Mm.
didn't have the wherewithal and the dedication to actually do it. But now that I'm older and I have some time, I can do it. So that's good enough for me. But
Yeah.
anyway,
I mean, it's a
well,
good
I'm
place
looking
to
forward
just
to
put
seeing more
things in.
stuff from you. And
Yeah. Yeah. I'm keen. I'm
I mean,
keen. I'm keen to get going.
you what?
I'm keen to put some more stuff out. It's just about finding the time. It's and also I think I'm incredibly lazy. I mean, that's just the problem, isn't
Well, that is a problem. I would rather sit around and drink some sparkling water and eat beef jerky. But I'm with you there. play my guitar. But one thing I wanted to ask you is how long, I mean, do you have, and I know we've all got outliers and, shit that we set aside. But generally, once you make up your mind, you're going to write this story. How long does that
Mm.
generally take you to get it all, ready to go?
Um, so anywhere between um, 30 minutes and like a week,
Mhm.
depending on what it is. If the idea is like there, if I've been sitting on it for a while, I can just spew it out in 30 to 40 minutes
Yeah.
and walk away from it. And we're only talking 1,000 words here. I mean, it's not a big deal, you know.
Yeah,
But
are
yeah,
you the guy that you get the idea and it just sort of cooks in your head for a while until you've really got, probably
mm,
70-80% of it ready to go and you just start writing?
yeah, pretty much. Like this is like this novel idea that I've got. Like I know it's when it comes out, it's just like it's going to come out pretty quickly. It's probably going to take 2 to 3 weeks to spew it all out. Obviously, editing will be a different story, and we all know it's going to be under 200 pages because I can't concentrate for any longer than about 150. Um,
Yeah.
but it's just that sort of thing. Like I've been sitting on that for a while now, but like I'll get the idea like the magician. Like I was sitting on that for a week. And I spat that out in like an hour, I think, and that was it. It was over. It was just past it, and moved on with the day.
Do you like, and I'm gonna ask you a typical interviewer cunt question. I'm gonna be the cunt interviewer. Do you
Yes.
think do you think that that fiction is art or entertainment?
Wow. There we go. I think it's both. I think it's both. I mean, it can be art, but there's a fine line between art and wankery. I mean, this is the problem, isn't it? If you push too far into the art, side of things, it becomes incomprehensible and basically just a circle jerk.
Yeah,
With other people like giving a round of applause. But I mean, it's got to be fun to read. I think like especially if you're asking people to pay for a novel, it needs to be entertaining. You need to be able to make sure that they're getting something out of what they're paying for.
yeah,
Whether that's like insight or entertainment. It doesn't matter.
yeah.
You just got to pick your side. And so, sorry for sitting on the fence there, but it's
That's about what I
yeah.
expect from an Australian. So, um,
from a colonial peasant.
that's right. That's exactly right. Hey, I'm from Alabama. It's the same. We talked about that once that
Yeah.
Australia and Alabama were essentially kind of the same because Australia was a penal colony and
Mm.
uh, the at least I think that's true. Is that true?
Well, all the states except for South Australia were penal colonies at some stage. Yeah.
Yeah, and so like that's also one of the things that the Royals did with the South was that all the aristocracy and whatnot got to live in Boston and maybe as far south as Virginia. But then when you start getting down into Georgia and Alabama, that's where they sent all the Irish and the criminals and everybody else. So I think we talked about that on our first live stream a few years ago. How
Mm.
it kind of makes sense that you like Southern Lit because there's a kind of rogue kinship
Mm.
between the American South and Australia, at least as far as our origins are concerned, regarding the British. So I always thought that was, and I had never really made that connection until you and I talked that first time. And I don't remember
Mm.
what you said that kind of sparked that, but I was like, oh, hey, yeah, maybe there's a lot more I think there's a lot more to that than I'd ever thought about before. So.
Yeah. 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 I agree with that.
Plus, we're all regarded by everybody else as a bunch of savage peasants anyway, kind of like you said. So you know, if you're a dirty white boy from Alabama, you don't necessarily get a lot of respect. But
Mm.
whatever. Yeah. All right. Well, man,
I
listen,
mean,
it
I
was
will.
great. We need to do this again. And when I think, after
Yeah.
you post some more stuff on Substack that we can talk about and maybe even kind of go in depth on a little bit from a technical standpoint and all kinds of other
Mm.
bullshit that doesn't matter but gives us something to do for 30 or 60 or 90 minutes, we can do that again because I've always had a lot of fun talking to you, or with our occasional WhatsApp chats where various hijinks occur. And it'd be a lot of fun for me to do this again.
Yeah, yeah. Sounds good. Yeah, more than happy to do this again. Yeah, it's been fun.
All right, man. For whoever is out there checking this out, y'all need to check out Barry Substack. And
Mm,
if you're out there and you already follow me on Substack or subscribe to me, I'm subscribed to him, so you can find him that way easily too. And really, great dark humor, hilarious, unexpected absurdity, and and hideosities that you'll find in in Barry's stories. And I appreciate you taking the time to hang out.
no, so
And
yeah, thanks
we'll
for having me. That's great.
uh, we'll do it again sometime soon. And for those of y'all out there, I I think MT White is going to be the next interview that I do if he's
Mm,
able and willing to sit down and talk with an ape like me, because he writes a very sophisticated,
mm.
highbrow shit that's really very good, and that is much better than mine. So I'm going to fall prostrate before his large mind, and and we'll let him dissect the state of literature these days. But
Very
he's
active.
a really good
Very
guy.
active.
He wrote a good novel called Content,
Mm,
um, that I talked about with him years ago too. So I think he's gonna be the next guy I talk to. So y'all can be expecting that, and we'll see you next time.
sounds good.
Yeah.